All right, so let's put some context into this video. It is January 11th, and VCT 2025 EMEA kickoff is about to start in about 4 days. Nonetheless, though, there's been a couple of roster announcements or news that came out from organizations where some players can't make it, so that might skew a little bit towards the results of some teams towards kickoff. But I still wanted to do and have some fun with the predictions going into EMEA. And mind you, this is also patch 10.0 where Tejo is also in the mix, so that also in itself is going to skew potentially a lot of results. So without further ado, let's go into it. You have on your left side here on the screen just basically my predictions on the left that we're going to click, and on the right side I actually have the bracket where we could click into the matches to look at the player names, so we have a little bit more around having a visual around the rosters as we're going to talk about the teams. So I'm going to go by it by one by the schedule rather, starting with the BBL and Giant X game. So overall, I think this game is going to be all right, at least to kick things off, a nice little appetizer into the Giga Banger match that we're gonna have following this one on that day. But if you want to have a close look here towards BBL, for example, I mean, at this point, we all heard here that Yampi is the one that's leading right now the team, although the roster, I think, was kind of really built around him as an IGL2, so that's going to be a new responsibility for Yampi as well. The thing that sucks now for BBL is, unfortunately, they won't be able to play with Chihuahua, unfortunately, who didn't have his visa sorted out on time, so they're gonna have to bring in Vac. So with that, just like a short-term turnaround with Tejo in the mix, I don't know how quickly BBL could turn things around on their side, which potentially might give a huge upper hand for Giant X, who they have rebuilt around Cloud and Purple. I think Cloud most recently has been the IGL for Giant X as well, but I think the talk of the town is going to be around Westside, who seems to be, you know, known to just pop off under like a Sentinel Viper role. But the thing that's interesting around Westside is, if you look at his past history on playing a Sage, is not playing a Sage on maps where you would think a Sage would play. For example, on Split or on Icebox. He's actually utilizing Sage on what was it, Ascent, which is bringing back to like the Knights days back then in North America in tier 2, but also I think he plays Sage on maps like Bind, if I'm not mistaken. So that in itself, I think, is something that's cool. And also having Viper in your agent pool is also very important. And the reason why I say it's cool is because, again, we have to think about patch 10.0 with Tejo, where Tejo is going to be an annihilator of Sentinel roles, where potentially KJ and Cypher is out of the question, and you're going to start seeing, well, maybe Cypher could still be utilized map dependent because the camera's still pretty good, but overall, you may still start seeing more Deadlock or Sage or Vice depending on the maps. So and maybe even remove the whole Sentinel role and have more stall effects, right? Remember the meta of the Astra and Viper, for example, when players are trying to hit sites with raised nades, it was already going to break all the KJ and Cypher utility, but if you have that suck and molly to delay and the Viper walls to delay even more, and now even on top of that Tejo with the concuss, you could still do some good stall and stop waves of pushes. So again, to go back to what I was talking about here with Westside, with him being able to play a little bit of Viper and Sage, I think that's going to help tremendously into Giant X overall here as a roster. The only thing for me, though, the caveat is that Westside and Tamashi, if I'm not mistaken, have a little bit of a role crossover, where Tamashi was also playing a little bit of Cypher back then too, with KC and some Omen. So they might be at a point where Westside might fully take the Sentinel role and Tamashi is going to start playing a little bit more of a controller role. But that said, he doesn't have too many on record of Astra being played back in last year for VCT. And again, I feel that Astra is super important to have if you're going to start bringing Tejo into your comps and not even play like a Breach or something like that too. So Tamashi, if he's going to start bringing out the Astra, hopefully he's going to be comfortable in that role. And Giant X should still be for me, in a comfortable position to win this matchup against BBL because of the sub situation here over at BBL with Vac joining in. But that said, let's go into that Giger Banger matchup here for KC and Na'Vi. Holy crap, is this going to be fun? I think KC and Na'Vi, as well as Vitality, went through a whole rebuild and then trying to go with like a make it or break it a la Optic / Energy style of like, we have to build a super team and we have to make it happen now because there's such a big fandom around, for example, teams like KC and Vitality, and also Champs is going to be in Paris. So you want to make sure that you're putting potentially the big bucks into your roster, and also you want immediate results. So that is going to give a lot of pressure here on the shoulders of Sadak, for example. But this is not unfamiliar territory for players like Sadak, because Sadak has had that same type of pressure with Loud, for example. Going into kickoff in 2024, you remember he was, or if you're watching it, chat, you could watch back those games, but kickoff for Americas, he even pulled out like some crazy stuff on Less on Viper, Phoenix on, I think, Quick or whoever it was that they were using at the Duelist at that time, and Breach as a initiator on maps like Ascent, and still found some good value. So I think with a patch, again, bringing in Teo, it gives an opportunity for Sadak and Aang to really cook some stuff up that's going to throw their opponents off guard in this matchup, and maybe even teams if they're able to do a deep run. So if you haven't even watched Sliggy's predictions over at EMEA, I think he talks about that a little bit there, and I agree with him. And if you haven't seen it yet, I'll link it in the description below so you can have a click over and follow our homie here, Sliggy. That said, I think that overall, Elite and Sugetsu bring tremendous firepower to the team for KC as well. Although, very similar to BBL, Elite and Sugetsu will have some overlaps in terms of their role. So I wonder who's going to be playing that controller role no matter what between Elite and Sugetsu. And on top of that, if they could play the Astra well. Because if you're not playing Astra and you're bringing out here a Teo and you don't have a Breach, you are falling behind. So that is going to be the big question mark for KC. And the other thing is Martin. Martin probably had some moments where people are questioning him as a duelist, if they wanted to maybe bring out a new duelist out in KC instead. But I think this is a perfect patch for Martin to really shine, because it kind of showed for me in the KC days of last year that he wasn't really comfortable playing that Neon role, and sort of gave it to narrate from time to time, and they wanted to try to test that out. But with the Neon nerfs, and again, Teo coming in and an opportunity to open the doors more for Raze coming back into the roster and even implement more Yoru in your plays, this is a perfect patch for Martin that shows that his agent pool for his duelist role is really around a Raze and a Yoru. So I'm expecting for him to pop off a lot more here going into 2025. On the other end, I think Na'Vi at the bottom here is in the same boat in terms of building a super team, but also having a really good team. If you want to kick things off with Koala Noob, their import coming in from Americas, and very similarly, if you haven't watched the power rankings of EMEA for Plat Chat, I'll link it below. But I do agree here with what Shai was mentioning, that Koala Noob is such a good duelist, although I will have to disagree with what Shai was saying that Koala Noob was the best Jet in the world mechanically, because quite honestly, if you followed the challenger scene for North America, Koala Noob didn't have the best results for Jet in itself, and the synergy in itself for Koala Noob with the Jet and the rest of the team didn't really pan out. So on maps like Icebox, he's going to play some Omen, but more importantly, he's playing a little bit more Yoru for maps like Sunset or whatnot, although Sunset is not in the map pool anymore, but Yoru is going to still be very good, as I've mentioned before, on a lot more different maps. And you know, in the past, Angel was trying to cook already with Yoru in the comp over in Na'Vi with previous rosters, so this is a perfect opportunity for Angel to really build out his strat book around Yoru and leverage Koala Noob on top of that to do the best that he could do. The only caveat to that one, though, is that Koala Noob also didn't have the best Raze. So for the Raze maps like Lotus, for example, M80 actually had Kuala playing Sage, and they were playing a null duelist comp on that map. Although it had some pretty good results, he was playing the agent very selflessly too, to try to create space in his own way as a Sage, with Sage walls and slow orbs to gain space. But unfortunately, to the trade-off of that, he can't be as aggressive and can't escape as well with the operator. So it was hit or miss in terms of his KDA going into those matches, but still played a nice and very good selfless role for the team. And I think he has that drive to continue to do so, and continuing to want to prove here to, the main audience and the fan base that he has what it takes to be one of the best duelists here in the world. So that said, I think that is a great start. The other thing too, is bringing in Ruxic over to Na'Vi. If I'm not mistaken here, Ruxic was farming in Challengers or VCL as a controller player. So I think this is going to be very, very good to bring into the team. It's just going to have me question now to see what Angel's going to do a little bit more, and I'll talk about potential comps that they may use. But Rusick, definitely at least some crazy firepower that he's going to bring into this team. The main controllers he's been playing, though, I think is a lot of Omen, so hopefully his Astra is going to be quite good if they want to implement some Teo. Hero is another literally great agent, or great player rather, with a deep agent pool for a Na'Vi. You saw him fill the shoes of Leo in Fnatic in 2024. Going into that split 2, they went undefeated in that split 2 and still had a pretty decent showing at Champions. Talking about Hero specifically, going into that stage. So at the highest level, as a sub, as almost basically a rookie coming in mid-season, he's still able to perform decently. That is going to build tremendous confidence for Hero going into 2025 and going into kickoff 2, because now you're still playing on LAN, you're still playing on Sage, you know what it's like already, and you already know that you could already perform at the highest of capabilities at the biggest stage. So I think this is going to help. Very similar to, for example, Icy over at EG, I'd like to say, going into 2025. But we'll talk about Americas in a later video, so please give me a follow and sub if you could support me, because I'll pump out that video in the next couple of days. Last but not least, I mean, we all know what Xiao and Angel could do, so we want to talk a little bit more about this agent pool, or the composition that Na'Vi could bring. Again, I think that Kuala Noob is going to be your Yoru player. Hero is going to be potentially now your main Sentinel role. Rux is going to be your controller, which now gives an opportunity for Angel to just bring Tejo in and Xiao to support as a breach, or even a fade, whatever they need going into that one. And I think it's actually an agent that fits Angel quite well in terms of playing a Tejo, because you don't have to do any lineups. You don't have to focus on a mini map and look through and see where you want to look around the map, especially with no pings now, on how you want to do your lineups. You can just pull out your iPad, put the rockets in, and you can move through. So I think it's going to help alleviate a little bit in terms of Angel's comfort in calling while playing. Around the firepower that they have here for Na'Vi is going to be great. But again, the only big question mark that I have though now is what is going to happen for Na'Vi for raise maps, right? Because they don't really have a full time raise player in the comp, where Kuala Noob, yes, has played some raise a bit. He plays it okay, but not at probably the highest level as we could see, for example, like Jing or Jogging or something like that, you know? So it's going to be a tough one, a tough call for Na'Vi. At least the map pool is going to be deep enough for them to implement a lot of Yoru, so they could probably ban out like the Lotuses and the Binds of the world and still potentially win a 2-1, which is why actually I have Na'Vi beating KC as my... Could be a hot take or not. I think it's a coin flip at that point, but I think Na'Vi is going to take it. But make sure you comment below to see if you agree or disagree. What other matches that we have right now going into the next day? January 16th at noon Eastern Standard Time. It's Liquid and Koi. I mean, I'm not too keen on this matchup anyways. I think it's, two teams that are going through major roster overhauls, and the players that they brought in are like cool, but not like at a firepower star level that gets me super excited about this game. It's a coin flip, and unfortunately I think whoever wins this game is going to lose to Foot anyways. But I think one of the coolest things, or two of the coolest things the coolest storyline for each team, rather, I'd like to say, is Patatek being able to find a home once again here since his I forgot what team he played with. Was it Fish 123? Was it Party Parrots? I can't remember. But Patatek is able to find a home now back with Team Liquid, now that he's had such a good run as a sub for Heretics last year, put out some great numbers as a KO, put out some great fragging highlights, some frag highlights rather overall. So I think Patatek is going to help this team out a lot, but how deep can they go? That's yet to be proven, and I still don't know what they could do here, especially with Nats continuing his IGL role here for Team Liquid. And for Koi, speaking of IGLs, I mean, I'm going to hype up Flya because he's a North American hero for me, going overseas to help out Koi. Again, they were looking for an IGL, I think, through EMEA. They were able to find one with Flya. He's had some pretty decent games as well with MXS and had a deep run with MXS in the challenger scene, although unfortunately they fell short towards the end where they couldn't even make it into the Ascension stage, losing to I think TSM at that point. But at least Flya has an opportunity to show that he has what it takes to play here from tier 2 to tier 1. And that's the other crazy part as well. He's been grinding the tier 2 scene for quite a long time, but now on top of that, he's going to have to IGL at the tier 1 level for a European team that he didn't have too many opportunities to play with in the first place. So this is going to be asking a lot here for Flya, but thankfully he does have a good coaching staff around there that could help him out. And they're probably going to have a lot of server time to potentially get this victory here over Team Liquid. So I'm going to have Koi moving through. Dude, this is crazy that so far everybody at the bottom of the bracket is going to win for me. And is that going to be the same case here for Gentlemates and Apex? Potentially. Let's look through the storylines. Again, another okay matchup for me if we want to look at that. I think the biggest storyline for Apex, is Fluorescent joining the ranks of Apex and starting her tier 1 debut as a first GC player going into tier 1. I think this is freaking awesome overall, but unfortunately it's going to lose a little bit of that flair and a little bit of the hype, because unfortunately Apex goes in with a fifth that was never announced and a fifth that also has visa issues. So I have no idea who the fifth is, but I'm assuming that their fifth is they're trying to pick up a Sentinel player, because looking at the rest of the team, they were missing a Sentinel player. And Odorous, being the coach here for Apex, has played the Sentinel role in the past. So that's my copium here, looking at Apex, where they could potentially win this game, is Odorous coming in. I mean, he's also helping out with the strat book around Apex, so he kind of knows what he has to do in his role, and also has played Sentinel roles in the past, so this could help out. And they're playing against Gentlemates that has had a full rebuild around Kadavra, but Zipline, I guess, is the biggest one that comes into mind when I look at this roster. But unfortunately for me, it's also a very underwhelming team, because it was underwhelming results from all of Apex, Gentlemates, Team Liquid, and Koi. So this is all another like meh match for me. So I'm going to give it here to Apex because I just love Fluorescent. Moving in, though, to the next day. So after 16 is 17. So, oh, dude, this is going to be another big day. So, Vitality playing against winner of K-Corp and Na'Vi. So let's look at the introductions of the team first. Wait, do I have the dates right? Yeah, the 17th. So Vitality, I think this is a team also that brings in crazy firepower that they added during the offseason, being Les and Durka, and also I think Trex as well. Trex was joined here, yes, most recently from Koi. But Les and Durka for me are awesome to talk about. Les brings in tremendous firepower on top of that as clutching capabilities. I think there was so many times in Americas where I would see Tui's and Les in like a 2vx, either with shares versus rifles on an eco or just rifles to rifles. You always counted Les and Tui's to be able to win it. So to be able to have him find like a fresh new home, new room to breathe, being able to play some Viper as well as some Sentinel into the team, I think this is going to be great into Vitality start. Durka is another huge one, stayed very consistent. I don't think people were questioning him at all. If they were, you're kind of trolling. Still looked very good during champs. And the only thing for me, though, is what happens now with Durka joining the team. What is the difference now with him and Safe in terms of how are they going to split these roles? I guess for me, if I'm looking at Safe's agent pool from last year, he hasn't played too much Yoru, if not at all. So maybe on maps where you could leverage some Yoru, Durka could play some Yoru, and Safe maybe starts playing controller. And then on other maps where you're playing the rest of the duelists, Safe is going to take that mainstay, and Durka is going to play controller. That is actually the other crazy part, is that Durka potentially could be playing not a duelist role for a team for the first time, and maybe full-time controller, which is not crazy in terms of seeing the evolution of a player moving in from a star duelist role into a controller role. We've already seen that with TENS last year, but just the legacy here that Durka has already built from the past as, you know, a top performing consistent duelist going into a controller role is kind of crazy. And the other biggest question mark for me in Vitality as well is maybe for you that are watching this video is questioning Faded. Who is Faded after all, right? Who is Faded as the head coach for Vitality? Thankfully, like, I had a chance to meet Faded back in LA because of Americas, but he's been an analyst for FaZe, and I've met him through Baby Bay, and I think he was even an analyst for FaZe during the Baby Bay days. So maybe that's how he got his in. Not maybe, that is how he got his in. But at the same time, the bigger question mark is, well, he was head coach of Fnatic right after going into Challengers of last year. And if you're looking at TSM, they didn't really perform well to people's expectations just because of the TSM name. But if you actually have been watching those games for TSM in the Challengers days of last year, dude, they actually look quite awesome. There was always a top 4 team that you were thinking that was going to ascend from Americas, and it was going to be from NA, and that was going to be around Dark Zero, Oxygen Gaming, MXS, and M80. So for me, even going into the predictions of last year, TSM for me was kind of like the gatekeeper team that I wanted to talk about there, moving into the storyline of 2024. And you know what? They were. Because Split 1, they weren't the best, and going into the mid-season cup, yeah, okay, they were actually doo-doo. But going into Split 2, they basically broke the line of scrimmage to be able to cross that and make it into playoffs. And in the playoffs, they lost in the first round, I think, to M80, and then had like the deepest run from lower round 1 all the way into the grand finals, beating teams out of the top 4 that we were mentioning before. So they beat Oxygen, and they also beat who's the one that, not Dark Zero, Oxygen and MXS, sorry. So they beat Oxygen and MXS. They played against M80 in the grand finals, lost to that, but still qualified. But if you look at their Ascension stage, they also dropped out in 6th place, which is the last team out of the 6 in the Ascension roster, or in the Ascension tournament. But that in itself, 2 of the teams that they lost against were still against, because it was a round robin, so they had to play against M80 and All Knights. I even think they had, and there were both BO3s that went into Giga overtime matches for 2 of those maps in those BO3s. And I think they even had close games against 2G, if I'm not mistaken, if it wasn't a comeback there coming in from Sim. I might be off on that one, but nonetheless, they still had some very close games that he potentially could have closed out to make it into the playoffs. I don't think they would have been able to qualify from Ascension into partnership, but I think that in itself proved for Faded that when it comes down to those high intensive moments and those important games, that he's going to put the work in to make sure that his team is going to do well. And I think this is going to be perfect. Again, you're looking at this team Vitality, just like KC with Paris at champs. They have to have results right away, so they have to bring in as much as they could. So I think they're putting a lot of faith into Faded, but also I think it's a great addition that they have Malek, right? So Malek, also mentioned by Shayo during Plat Chat. He was a high-level coach back in like the early days of CSGO going up to 2021. And even in 2021, he was coaching G2 that didn't have like a powerhouse team. This was like Jack and Devoduvek around with Nico and Hunter as the cousins going in. I forgot who their 5th player was. But they even made it into the grand finals of the CSGO Major, having to play against the best team in the world at that time, which was Na'Vi. They were unstoppable in that year, and that was like the duo of like electronic and simple, where Boomage was also owning it up, and they had, I think, Bit as one of their players too, so Bit and Perfecto, if I'm not mistaken. So that was still a great roster and an unstoppable roster, and they almost beat them. They almost got it to hoist a trophy in CSGO. So Malek brings a lot of good experience in terms of knowing how to coach a team to victory, is what I'm trying to say. So that is going to help a lot too. And, you know, we've seen Happy as a major winner coach M80 and still have some good consistent results for that team too. So there's although unfortunately they fell short from qualifying 2 ascensions in a row, it still shows here that the experience coming in from tactical FPS from other games could also help in a game like Valorant as well. So those two, in terms of that coaching staff, is going to help a lot around building this super team that you have for Vitality right now, or Vitalité. So that said, I'm going to have to go with Vitality, or Vitalité, winning this, or actually in France to go Vitality. Vitality, oh, Vitality. I don't know how the whole song goes, but whatever. Sing it down in the comments. And the other one is going to be Fnatic and Giant X. I still think that Fnatic's roster this year is going to bang. If you're looking at it, they have Kayak that they added most recently, and they also added Crashies. I think Crashies should be playing over Sayonara here, but I'm still very high on Kayak and Crashies, that they're going to do very, very well, and they're going to still be a very competitive team. An opportunity for another player going in from Americas into EMEA, and a chance to prove himself that he still has what it takes. So Crashies is going to come in with a lot of fire, and I've always been a big fan of Crashies since the NV together were terrific Optic days. So I'm still going to continue to ride that bandwagon on to Crashies. That in itself, though, it's quite crazy to think that with this roster for Fnatic, they're still like a top contending team. And I like the fact that I'm saying top contending team, because we're moving now into 2025 with not only a one-team region for Americas. It's really a toss-up now between like Fnatic, Vitality, Na'Vi, K-Corp, and Heretics. They're now a 5-team region out of like 12, and I think that's pretty sick, with even Foot getting very, very close to that race. So I think this year for EMEA is going to be super fun, which is why, again, giving myself the promise that I want to follow more regions this year. EMEA is going to be a fun one to learn some storylines around. That said, Fnatic against Giant X, that should still be Fnatic winning over Giant X quite easily. And going into the last day where we finally see all the teams play once, then the first one is going to be Foot. Foot, I think, needed some heavy firepower and a breath of fresh air, and they finally got it here with their latest addition being Zeus. I think he looked pretty good going into the off-season games of Red Bull Homegrounds, and at the same time, unfortunately, it sucks that CNET wasn't able to keep his consistency rather from his Ascend 2021 champs victory. But again, I think they needed that breath of fresh air for Foot Esports. They bring in some crazy firepower with Zeus. He looked very hungry, very comfortable, and already gelling well with the team. So I think this is only going to help once again for Foot going into 2025 to kick things off. And I think they're going to have quite an easy victory as well against Koi. Last but not least, for the last matchup where we get to see all the teams, Heretics against Apex. Heretics needs no introduction. They've gone through 0 changes from 2024 to 2025. So still putting a lot of faith into this roster. And why the hell not? I mean, Woot and Riens, you saw it as well on Platchat Awards at the end of 2024, and if you haven't watched it, I'll put that in the description as well. But Woot and Riens were on the top of the list for so many of the panel as being top initiators, top flex players, etc., etc., etc. And now they're able to continue that up with Benji Fishy as one of the top Sentinel players of 2024. That around the coaching staff, even winning coach of the year, if I'm not mistaken, was Nelzinho, and I'm pretty sure it was over at the Platchat compound. So yeah, still putting a lot of good faith, and why not? They definitely deserve it here for sure with what they were able to pull off last year. I think they're still going to look pretty good with Teo coming in and with the changes in patch 10.0. So they're going to be moving forward over against Apex. So let's continue on here and start going into the coin flip predictions for the rest of the games. I think Vitality should be able to take this over Foot as well with that super team, and Heretics should be able to take it over against Fnatic. So let's move on to the lower brackets. Hopefully by then we have the roster and visa issues sorted out here for Apex. But I think Liquid may be able to take this one. I think Apex is still, again, even if they fix the roster issues or the visa issues mid week or whatnot, there's still too much catch up to do here for them to be able to play online. It's going to be good experience in reps at the very beginning. And after that, I think the off season or the break that they'll have between kickoff and Masters Thailand, they'll be able to come back in full force. Giant and K Corp, this should be an easy one here for KC. Na'Vi and BBL, I'm going to give it to Na'Vi. Koi and Gentlemates will be a toss-up for that one in my eyes, but I will give it to I'm going to give it to Koi at this point. Team Liquid versus KC. I think this is going to be a KC deep run in the lower brackets. As I say that, we have a Foot versus KC after, so I don't know how that's going to go. Na'Vi and Koi, this should be a Na'Vi game. Dude, the lower bracket matches here for EMEA are going to be bangers. Holy crap, look at this. Once you get into the lower round 3, potentially a Vitality, Heretics, Foot, KC, and Fnatic, and Na'Vi. Wow, that is a crazy region that we had this year for EMEA. But lower round 3, I'm going to give it to KC. And Fnatic versus Na'Vi, I'm going to have to give it to Na'Vi here as well. KC versus Na'Vi, you know what? I feel that I'm in the same boat as Shayo in terms of how much I'm cooking and how I have high expectations for Na'Vi and for Vitality as well. Vitality, I will give it to the upset over Heretics. But Heretics will be able to come back in the lower brackets to be able to get the #1 victory in the grand finals against Vitality in EMEA. So that's my lock-in. I'm gonna submit that. Here's the link to it. I'm gonna post it in the description below so you could do your own pick'ems against me and see how we do against the results. As kickoff will start in EMEA on the 16th. In 4 days, on the 15th. So make sure you watch that, and please also send me your support if you can by clicking the link below or clicking the subscribe button below, because I'm going to try to pump out some more Valorant content throughout the year for 2025. So much love, thank you so much, and we'll catch you in the next video.